Hey guys, welcome to the review show. My name's Austin. The Substance stars Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley. Elizabeth Sparkles, renowned for an aerobics show, faces a devastating blow on her 50th birthday as her boss fires her. Amid her distress, a laboratory offer for her substance which promised to transform her into an enhanced version of herself. Saw the trailer last week for this movie. Had no idea what this movie was about, and I was very intrigued by it. The trailers gave very little away about the movie. All I knew that Demi Moore was in it and Margaret Qualley was in it, and it had some form of thrilling and horror tensions in the trailers. That's all I knew. Story-wise, nothing. Didn't know anything. I was going into this very blind, and I had a very good time with this movie. This movie made me feel anxious and creeped out in so many different ways that it's very hard to describe how I felt in this movie. This movie grossed me out. Anything with needles going in somebody or like close-ups on stitch, like it's just fucking gross. Like there's even a scene in this movie where a character's nail gets broken off, and I fucking hate that. Just that's gross. So you have Demi Moore, who's playing a 50-year-old version of Elizabeth Sparkles, who was very well known in Hollywood, who's now kind of like hit their peak. Is kind of like this, they're past their prime time now. Gets fired from her job. She gets this like weird flash drive from like an anonymous source, and that leads to her to this abandoned type of place where she can get substance where she will be able to create a younger self of her. Basically, almost like somewhat relive her prime years. She was very practically where she was very hot and thriving in life. And with that premise, you have a very interesting story where you have a very old actress who isn't getting the respect as she used to have because she's way older. And with a person in that mental mind state, it can be very easy to convince someone to take a substance and practically do some form of experiment on them to create a younger version of themselves. And that could be very relatable to somebody, especially for a woman, because in Hollywood, this is not trying to be sexist or anything, but women kind of get the more of this respect in Hollywood because the higher execs want someone that's younger and hotter and more attractive. And so when you hit, I guess in Hollywood, your prime state for them, they think is 30. So when you hit 30, you kind of just start getting treated more disrespectfully, even though you made a lot of great projects in your past and you're a very high talent type of person. That doesn't matter to them. So because you just don't have the look anymore. And they dive a lot into that at first, and they kind of lose it at some point in the film, and it kind of just turns into like a montage of things, and you kind of skip over some stages of the film. And this movie is like 2.5 hours long. This movie didn't need to be 2.5 hours long, by the way. The movie kind of somewhat loses itself in the middle, and actually repicks it itself up when it comes into the horror aspect of the film, which I really like. But I think there could have been more of a psychological side of it too. Did try to go for more of a bigger finale and more monstrous type of finale. And that's where the movie kind of slightly loses me a tiny bit, because the movie goes on for like 15 to 20 minutes longer more than it should have. I think this movie would have been in a more of the A minus range if it didn't have that final 15 to 20 minutes. But the movie does somewhat drag in the middle, so that kind of also hurts the movie a tiny bit, because when you really look at the film, when you really analyze it, what really happened for the past hour? Not much. You do see her younger self more thriving in life, and that kind of gets her somewhat jealous. But that all happens in the third act of the film. So the second act of the film is just kind of somewhat hollow. Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley do very well in this movie. They are very highly talented actors. Margaret Qualley is very timid in this movie, especially when she kind of starts becoming like somewhat a form of a threat to the older actress. And Dennis Quaid is in the film a bit, who is somewhat comical. He is actually really good in this movie, and he's very funny, and and you kind of hate the guy. So you're laughing with him, but also you want to hate the guy because he's this fucking asshole executive CEO type of guy who just cares about money and wants to exploit young women for their young bodies. So he's an asshole, but there's things that he does in the film that are actually hilarious. So I liked him a lot in the movie. He played the role perfectly. I'm gonna give The Substance a B+. Had a good time with this movie. I highly recommend you guys checking it out this weekend. If you don't have any kids or whatnot, if you're not gonna go see Transformers 1, which is not a bad film also that you go check out, but if you really want to check out like a horror film, The Substance is the film. It's really good, but just have somewhat low expectations a tiny bit because it does stumble its way a tiny bit through the film. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. Like always, I'll see you guys next review. Bye, guys.